Welcome everyone to another short video, and we're going to be doing a Kong POV in this one. For those of you who don't know what the POVs are, it's basically short stories from the point of view of the monsters, because since they can't speak and you don't know what's going on in their brains, it's just a theory of what they might have been thinking during the events of the movie. Some of the elements of the story take place off screen so that they can fit in with the rest of the story. Here is Kong's. Taking a deep breath, Kong rolled over and faced the sky. He was having one of his depressing spells, feeling quite lonely. He placed his hand on his stomach and let out a deep sigh, looking at the clouds as they traversed across the skies on their way to God knows where. He rolled his eyes and sighed in exasperation as he once again heard the clamor early in the morning. The island where he made his home, Skull Island, was pretty remote, and there wasn't a lot that happened there. Of course, there was the occasional raids by those predators that killed off his family. But now and again, the micro-apes would show up and boisterously announce their presence. Today was one of those days where Kong just wanted total quiet and solitude, and they would not let up. Whatever was happening, he was going to put a stop to it. He pounded his fist on the rock beside him and got up. He slowly made his way towards where all the clamor was coming from. He passed up their odious machines and toys and tools strewn all over his land. Every time they did this, he always had to clean up their mess, taking them up and crushing them into tiny bits and then tossing them over a cliff. Kong looked up and saw that they were on a cliffside. He took his time and climbed up slowly as to not announce his presence. And when he was eye level with them, they stopped fighting or doing whatever it is they were doing and just stared at him. And he stared at them. It wasn't the first time he's had an encounter like this. Usually, everything would just end and fizzle out with just one stare from him. The stupid little things had no idea what to do. Clearly, they were a mess together. So Kong had an idea just there and then. He snorted, and then he took the both of them up in each hand. They screamed in terror. Kong got down off of the cliff face. He ran to one side of the forest and tossed one of the men into the distance. It sounded like he fell in some bushes. At this point, Kong really didn't care. At most, the little thing would probably break a leg. He opened his other hand, which held the other human. He ran back to the other side of the forest and tossed that one into a stream. He thought to himself, "There, now none of you can complain, and maybe I can finally get some rest. If it's okay with you, though." Of course, the human didn't understand him, the human who was now soaking wet but very much alive. For a while, Kong experienced peace. He woke up, he stretched, and he never had to get up right away. He would always lay on his back from his side or his stomach and look up at the sky to see what story the clouds told today. This time, the clouds told the story of some ancient sea creatures who were battling, warring with one another, only to find out that the war started with a, "Hey, Kong, how are you?" Kong closed his eyes momentarily to prepare himself for the interaction. He looked over and saw Spunka. He put on a fake smile and turned over to face the Sker Buffalo. "Hey, Spunka, how are you? It's a great day today, isn't it, Kong? I was wondering if you wanted to go with me to remove some of the logs." Kong scratched his head, thinking. Well, he actually didn't have to think very hard. He didn't want to do it. But he also didn't want to insult the old Sker Buffalo. You see, Kong was much of a savior to the herbivores on the island. He protected them, and they looked out for one another. But it seems that as he got larger, more people were taking advantage of his opposable thumbs and strength than they were actually giving him. I'm actually kind of tired today, Spunka. Can we do it tomorrow? Or maybe later this evening? Oh, Kong, it won't take any time, I promise. Come on, you need to get up off of your back anyway. Let's go. As the Sker Buffalo started walking away, Kong plopped down onto his back, sighing in frustration. He would like it if one day he could just have some time to himself, which was ironic because part of his depression was that he had too much time to himself. That is, he had no one like him. He walked with Spanka over to the place where Spanka directed him. He could see a whole bunch of fallen logs there.
Oh, Kong, meet my granddaughter. Say hello, Chinchil.
Hello, Mr. Kong.
You don't mind if we teach her a little something while we're doing this, do you?
Kong sighed again and looked off into the distance. Why was it so hard to just say no?
Sure, I don't mind. Oh, thank you, I knew you wouldn't.
The mighty Skerbuffalo stood in front of the fallen tree and looked over towards Kong.
Not yet, Kong.
He looked back over to his granddaughter.
Chinchil, you see, to get the most nutritious of our food source, we have to ferment it. When the trees fall, then we go back a few weeks later and remove the trees, and underneath it, all of the detritus and the creatures that make the detritus and that feast on it also ferment the soil so that we can have beautiful new growth. This new growth is vital for a growing Skur.
And then Kong helps us to take it up? The old Skerbuffalo looks back at Kong on his left and smiles and winks.
Oh, yes, my little one. Kong is very vital to our world, you see, and he will lift up the logs, but you must also act quickly.
Kong positioned himself at the other end of the fallen tree so he could lift it up, to stand it up momentarily vertical, to allow the Skerbuffalo to feast on the new growth underneath and all the tasteful detritus. Kong zoned out as Sponka talked to his granddaughter. He looked back at her little legs and smiled, wondering to himself if this is what his life would have been like if he was allowed to grow up with his parents. He didn't remember much. I mean, a part of his memory was suppressed because of all the trauma he sustained at birth. But it was the animals of the island that taught him all of his ancestry. They were there when all of this had happened. A lot of their families died, but the ones that survived the torment of the skull-crawlers lived to tell the tale, lived to tell Kong about his parents and his species, and how they reigned, and how things were beautiful when they were alive. For the longest while, Kong was in denial. He refused to believe that none of his species made it. I mean, if his parents had the mind to save him, didn't the other parents save their children as well? Also, if the other fauna of the island had survivors, why didn't any of his have more survivors than him? It all made him very sad.
Spunka, I have to go. Oh, not yet, Kong. I'm almost done. Spunka, really? Oh, Kong, stop. You have nowhere to be.
Kong sighed and held his head down, not wanting to disrespect this older Skerbuffalo. Why is it that older critters never respect your time? Kong zoned off again, and then suddenly was snapped back into consciousness as he felt the tree slip out of his hands, with the earth shaking beneath his feet. Chinchil, the granddaughter Skerbuffalo, was still under the tree. It was falling straight for her head. Kong struggled to catch the tree before it hit her, only to have it slip out of his hands once more. Thinking fast, he kicked out towards Chinchil, consequently shoving her out of the way of danger. All the weight from the dead tree came down hard on the ground. Sponka exclaimed and ran to his granddaughter.
Ginny, are you all right?
I think so.
Kong, what was that? What's happening?
Kong frantically looked around, just as lost as the Skerbuffalo, or he looked back at the two of them, their eyes pleading for him once again to keep him safe. The loud noises were harsh and sudden. They reverberated across the entire landscape, and it's as if their whole world was sinking into the ocean. Kong had been told stories when he was little by the fauna of Skull Island that there would be a time, that there was a prophecy that this whole world, their little world that is the island, would be gobbled up by the sea. Kong was sure this is what was happening.
Get to safety, old man. I'm going to warn everybody else.
But, Grandpa, what about Kong? He should come with us.
Kong will be all right. He's the strongest one there is. If you want to help him, then we need to get to safety. That's right, Chinchil. Listen to your granddad. I'll be back before you know it.
Kong smiled at the young Skerbuffalo. It's been some time since anyone thought about his safety, his well-being. This gave him the vigor to turn in the other direction and head for the noises. It sounded like the earth was coming apart at the seams. As he ran closer to the clamor, a flurry of fauna ran past him in the opposite direction. In the distance, Kong saw large clouds of fire, creatures lying on the ground, injured and dying. What monster could do such a thing? The only monster that came to mind were the skull crawlers, but this was something much bigger. He heard the cacophonous clamor in the sky, chopping the air unceremoniously, and squinted his eyes against the brightness of the sun to see what was happening. There in the sky, he saw them, the tools of destruction that the humans often use to conquer and to lay waste to the landscape below them. How could something so small cause so much dismay? Kong shook his head, thinking that not even the skull crawlers had this much reach when it came to what they could destroy. At least they respected the landscape around them. These flying demons did not. In a rage, Kong patriotically unrooted a tree and hurled it towards the flying vehicle. He had more than enough time to practice his aim when it came to taking down flying creatures. He's had to fight them before, after all. These things were no different. Kong smiled to himself as his natural missile hit and obliterated its target. He watched it as it fell out of the sky. He grabbed one of the flying vehicles and looked inside. Of course, it was the humans inside of it. These pesky, furless micro-apes. Such tiny creatures that left such a tremendous footprint. Kong roared intimidatingly as he felt something sliding down his throat that fell from the flying vehicle. But the battle was just beginning. A whole bunch of the flying vehicles attacked him with their guns. He crushed the ones that were on the ground and swiped the air to try and get those that were still airborne to fall at his feet. With every minute they were alive, Kong grew angrier. A sizable vehicle had fallen to the ground. Kong picked that one up and used it to smash into the others until he was successful at felling them all. He had slayed the beasts once more. Hopefully they got his message. Kong headed back to his home and saw some of the creatures he had passed up to try and defend. He watched as many of them took their last breath, their eyes still entrained on him, their eyes still staring into nothingness as their life left them. A little too late. Kong was sad, but at that moment, he had to take care of himself. As he walked past the carnage, he saw Sponka in the distance with his granddaughter.
See, I told you he would take care of himself.
Kong, are you all right? Chinny asked, running up to him.
I'm all right. You need to take care of your grandfather now, okay? And try to do what you can for the others who need help. I'll see you guys this evening.
Kong spent the rest of his day how he usually spent it. Alone, nursing his wounds. He seemed to be going on autopilot as he caught a mire squid and headed for his sleeping grounds.
Come on, buddy. You've been very elusive for the past few months. I'm not going to feel like foraging tomorrow, much less later on, so I guess you're as good as it gets. The ultimate meal.
He spoke to the corpse of the squid as he dragged it on the ground behind him. Near to his sleeping grounds, he could hear something amiss. Skull crawlers. Hey, Kong! A voice emanated from the shadows, and a long, lanky bird with blue feathers came walking out on legs that looked like stilts. She bowed in greeting towards Kong.
Hi, Marisma. How are you?
I'm doing good, Kong. How are you? I heard about what happened.
I'm fine. Things could have been worse. We lost a lot of people today. I tried my best.
What happened? What was that? Was it the skull crawler? The big one?
No, it wasn't the skull crawler. It was... Marasma, don't worry about it. I need your help.
Oh, by the way, you have some visitors.
I know. I can smell them from a mile away. You want some of this mire squid?
I can't eat anything right now. My brother's still out there. He hasn't been home since last night.
You want me to help you look for him?
No, Kong. You're injured. Look at you. You need to take care of yourself. I'll go. Thank you. Thanks for everything that you do, okay?
Marasma.
The bird turned back and folded her wings. She was just about to take off. She had a one-track mind, and the only thing she could think of was her family. Her voice and her face softened as her eyes landed on Kong once more. Yes, Kong.
I know sometimes I don't always say it, but I do appreciate everything that you guys do.
You're telling us that.
I hope you find your family.
I do too, Kong. Have a good night. As if she were holding back tears, she spread her wings and shook her face. averted her eyes from Kong so that he couldn't see her expression that she was wearing, see that she was weeping in utter terror as to what happened to her brother and the rest of her family. Just as he's always done many nights before this, Kong, before settling down, put a piece of the Myers squid down right next to the door to his sleeping grounds, and he waited. Of course, the skull crawlers were there, lurking. 2 of them. He took care of them quite easily. If anything, they were annoying. Of course, if more than 2 of them ganged up on him, he would have quite the challenge. But Kong always knew how to keep himself safe, how to keep them separated. He would catch things, little tiny things. Since these creatures liked eating so much, Kong would strategically place little tidbits of the food that he would catch all around the island, far enough so that skull crawlers would more so fight over themselves before they gang up in a pack. They're not as organized as other pack hunters are, and that was Kong's blessing. Kong had barely dozed off when he heard a shrill scream. Someone was in distress. It sounded like Chinchil, but a little different. The voice was higher pitched. He ran towards the sound. He could hear a young skerbuffalo speaking to someone, but no one was speaking back to it. It was Willie. That was Chinchil's little friend, and he was trapped under one of those flying vehicles. Kong looked and squinted his eyes, narrowed his vision, and recognized what was there on the other side of the little skerbuffalo. It was one of those humans. It looks as though they were trying to help him, to help push the vehicle off. The fact that this little stupid thing was trying so hard and getting nowhere made Kong feel sorry for it. And, of course, Willie, too. Kong walked up to Willie. Oh, Kong! Oh, thank goodness! Thank goodness, Kong! I'm so glad that you're here!
Didn't your mother say you're not supposed to play around these parts? I should leave this thing on you, shouldn't I?
No, please don't do that, Kong, please. She'll kill me.
Don't worry. What you got there was your friend.
Oh, I don't know, one of these little things, but it's super nice. It's trying to help me, I think. But I'm gonna need more help. The 2 of us aren't strong enough.
Oh, so you need my help,
said Kong with a playful grin. The skerbuffalo rolled his eyes. He hated this lecture tone that older kids or adults would take with him. It's as though nothing he ever said was smart enough. Kong with ease removed the flying vehicle, or what was left of it, and he tossed it. He looked down at the human as Willie got up and walked away. Thanks, Kong. I owe you one.
Oh, I'm gonna collect on that.
I bet you will. Good luck, Will said as he looked back at the human and then at Kong. A very odd pair as they stood looking at each other. The human, sizes smaller than Kong was. Kong puffed out his chest. Part of him wanted to smash this thing where it stood, but he recognized that this one looked different, a lot softer, not as bulky as the others. It must have been a female. For all he knows, they must have abandoned her there too. She wasn't a threat. He wouldn't hurt her. Not like the skull crawlers hurt his mother and his older sisters. Kong always told himself that he would kill when necessary. Doesn't mean he has to like it. Kong woke up with a start. He didn't even realize he had fallen asleep, but it didn't matter, because he was blessed with the most amazing thing. The dancing colors in the sky ebbed and flowed as he sat down to watch them in awe. He wondered what made them. Was that an animal? Was it some sort of magic? He just wishes he had someone to share this moment with. No matter how he tried to pick himself up, he would always sink back down into loneliness and depression. He knew that he should be enjoying this moment, this artistic piece that nature has blessed him with. His eyes being able to see them, all their colors, and how smooth they swam across the sky. The colorful river of the air. But he just could not feel content. It made him feel worse the longer he sat there, and so he stood up and began walking away from his sleeping grounds. As he walked, he could make out something in the fog, on the cliff. He knows this land. up and down. He has memorized every section of this island, and he knew that that cliff, something was wrong about it. Something was off. The shape was all wrong. That's because there were two things standing on top of it that looked like humans. Immediately, Kong went on the defense, the rage boiling up inside of him, ready to smash them to pieces. He cut through the fog, intimidatingly, and stared them down. They looked back at him. He could tell they were afraid, but they didn't run. Instead, they grabbed onto each other's hands, and this took Kong aback. He noticed the female that was trying to help Will earlier. These were good humans, not like the warmongers. He knew that they were not a threat, and probably not even responsible for what happened to many of the innocent creatures on Skull Island. As Kong leaned down to get a closer look at them, his heart softened as a female human stretched out her hand and touched his face. That was the first type of contact like this he's ever felt since he was younger. It honestly made him want to cry, and it made him have hope that maybe someday he'd be able to have someone just like these two humans have each other. As if to slap the moment in the face, a noisy explosion sounded off. Kong roared in annoyance. Right at that time, someone called out his name. I'm coming, relax," he replied. It took him a while to get to the place, but he could see fire in the distance, these clouds of fire, the omens of the destruction of this island.
"Oh, Kong, thank goodness you're here."
Why? What's going on?
"The bad humans. They're back. You have to get rid of them or they're gonna burn down everything, everyone. More people are hurt. We lost some people,"
said Spanka, his mighty horns swaying in the dim light. Kong already felt stress, knowing that he had to confront these things again. He thought he had all of them. It's like they were retaliating. They were defying his authority in his house. Kong watched in agony as his home was being burned down in the distance by these unwanted imposter savages. He crashed through the trees in anger and yelled out to what he could see being a human on the shore waving his own little torch.
Why? Why are you doing this? If you don't turn around and leave, I'm going to kill you,"
said Kong to the brave human, or the stupid human on the shore. Still, the humans refused to leave. He could see that one on the shore that looked like the leader. He could see that he's seen him before, standing there, daring him to approach. This made Kong very uneasy. Normal animals that were much smaller than he was usually didn't display this level of brazenness and insolence. Kong made his way through the trees and just stared at the leader of the humans on the shore holding his stick of fire. In anger, outrage, and amazement at this thing's insolence, Kong beat his chest and headed straight for him in a dead run, at least as fast as he could move through the water.
I'll kill you for what you did to all those innocent people."
Charging at the human through the water he found hard to move through, he stopped short and screamed when a wall of fire came up around him. He knew it was a human's doing, especially the leader on the shore. Kong was burned very badly, but he wanted to take out the leader human before he did any more damage, and so, as a last-ditch effort, Kong wiped out as far as he could to try and hit the human. Suddenly the pain overtook him and he got lightheaded and fell into unconsciousness.
Kong. You are strong. You are better than this. You are my son. Your father was a warrior, and you carry his blood inside of you. Do not stay asleep.
The whispering voice faded into the back of Kong's mind as he opened his eyes. He saw right before him stood the lead human, staring him down like a demon from out of the pits, forgetting his place, forgetting just how much larger Kong was than he was. Wasting no more time and being fed up with this thing's insolence, Kong raised his fist and said,
"I told you I would kill you. Now bite the dust."
Down came his fist, ending the disgusting human's life. Kong could feel pain all over his body, but he had no time to nurse his wounds because the king's skullcrawler, the dreaded demon, the leader of them all, had woken up and was standing in the lake right across from him, only several yards away. This scared Kong at first. Kong tried to get up as fast as he could. He had bigger things to deal with now, but the alpha skullcrawler leapt onto him and smashed his head into the ground. When Kong regained consciousness, he was actually surprised to still be alive. All he could see was a bright blue canvas in front of him with some white-looking circular things floating across his line of sight. He realized he was on his back, staring up at the clouds and the sky.
Wake up, Kong. Kong, wake up.
He felt a nudge on his neck. He held his head and winced. He felt like a million swarming bugs were flying around in his brain. He closed his eyes and then opened it again and trained it on the face in front of him. He felt a long, wet thing wipe across his face. Ugh.
Kong, it's me, it's Chinny. Wake up, you gotta wake up. That thing, the Skullcrawler King, he's calling for reinforcements. If you don't take care of him, the others are gonna come up.
Chinny?
Yes, Kong, it's me. Can you get up?
The tiny skerbuffalo was sitting by his side. How long had she been there, he wondered. He heard screaming and gunfire in the distance, and he heard the cry of the Skullcrawler Alpha. Kong got up, but a little too fast, and he fell back down. He shook his head and tried to stand up again, poor Chinny trying to help him. He didn't have the heart to tell her that because she was so small, she barely did anything. When he got up, he swayed a little bit and then looked down at her. There was actually 4 of her, but as he steadied himself, he could focus on her a little better.
Chinny, where's your grandfather?
He's at home. He didn't know I came out. He'll be really mad, but I wanted to make sure you were okay. We heard you crying. He wouldn't let me come to help.
Kong leaned down, and this really took a lot out of him to do so. His knees and joints and everything on his body was hurting, not to mention the burns he sustained last night. He put his hand on her little shoulder.
Listen, Chinny, you're the best friend anyone could ever ask for. But if you want to help me, if you really care about me, I wish you'd be safe. Go back with your grandfather and stay with him, okay? I promise I'll come and get you when all of this is over.
You promise?
I promise.
Are you gonna kill him?
Kong thought to himself. It never occurred to him that this thing could kill him first.
I don't want to lie to you, Chinny, but I'm gonna die trying.
I don't want you to die.
Kong's face softened as a little baby skerbuffalo buried her head into his arm. Kong looked up as he heard Spunka calling out, running towards the both of them.
Chinny, why did you run off? I told you not to leave. Kong, I am so sorry. It's fine, Spunka. Really, she just needs some assurance. Keep her safe. I'm gonna go finish what I started.
Kong, said Spunka, turning around to face Kong as he left. Kong turned back around and looked at the old skerbuffalo. He had respected him. There were times when he resented Spunka, but he knew that Spunka believed in him. At first, Kong felt as though Spunka was taking advantage of Kong's size. After all, Kong always got hurt when he fought. But then when he thought about what Spunka was doing, as an old buffalo that used to be the leader of his very own herd, putting all that responsibility on Kong and believing in him to take care of this entire island, Kong realized that for Spunka to do something like that, he really saw him as a hero. He held him on a pedestal. He believed in him. And this made Kong feel good.
What's up, Spunka? Please be careful. I don't tell you enough, but everyone here depends on you. I don't have much to give, but do you need reinforcements?
Kong smiled and rolled his eyes.
And where you gonna get that from? We have some people on the other side of the island now. They're older, but together.
Kong raised his hand as if to stop Spunka in his speech.
I don't have the time, Spunka. I'd have to wait for them to come all across here, and honestly, I can't risk losing anybody else. This is my fight. These things, they killed off my parents. This big skull crawler, I know him. He's one of the last generation of skull crawlers that was with his parents when they killed off my family. So I'd say it's a little bit personal. You know what I mean?
Spunka smiled. He wasn't stupid. He knew exactly what Kong was doing. Kong wanted to make an excuse so that Spunka wouldn't go along.
You're the best, Kong,
said Spunka. And with that, Kong left. As Kong was running towards all the cacophonous events, he heard the screams and the voices of some of the humans. He recognized them. Kong wasn't an idiot. He saw the divide between the humans, the bad ones that were destroying his homes, and the other humans, just like the Iwi people of his island, that actually respected him and wanted to help. After all, he killed the leader, who he believed to have been the toxic human, making all the others evil. Kong made his way up a cliff face and saw the skullcrawler below. He looked around to see if he could use something as a weapon. That thing must be stopped. He didn't understand why it didn't kill him right there and then. The only thing that could explain this behavior is that the humans distracted him. Kong had to save them. He had to take care of this. He had to stop this thing from terrorizing his island. Part of him was very afraid, because this creature was older than he was. It grew much bigger and faster, surely because of all the food that it had at its disposal. Kong always stayed away from it until it went back into hibernation. So even though Kong would never show it, he was terrified of this creature. He took a rock that he found nearby the cliff face, and he grabbed it in both hands, ran and leapt off the side to crash it onto the skullcrawler below. The creature was so shocked, but it didn't miss a beat. For a while, the creature tussled with Kong. Kong's heart was beating faster than it ever did before when he realized just how much more powerful this creature was, how solid its muscles were, how hard it was to subdue it. The creature bit into Kong, and he felt pain as it shredded his skin off of his body. He saw clumps of his own fur coming off. The creature bit into his neck, and Kong couldn't breathe. He panicked and then grabbed onto the creature's jaw, trying to rip it apart, but the creature was strong. It dodged his attacks. It bit down on him with its powerful jaws. They battled in the water, and Kong could feel himself getting tired. Kong took a nearby tree and made it into a weapon. He ran toward the skullcrawler as it ran towards him, and he whacked it with all the force that he could. The creature did not slow down. Kong's stamina was failing. He had no idea how to defeat this thing, and it was scratching him and biting him. Before Kong knew it, he was flying through the air, thanks to the creature's tail that was a lot more powerful than Kong thought it could ever be. Surely he's fought the smaller ones, and has even fought multiple of them at the same time, but never one this huge. Kong tried to get up, but he was entangled in the chains of a fallen ship. This was it. He was going to die. This is how it happened. He did try, and he hoped that if he did pass on, that someone else would be able to protect the residents of Skull Island. Surprisingly, the skullcrawler got distracted and walked away as something swarmed him. It was the bullets of the humans. They had saved him. They were on his side trying to help. I mean, Kong didn't think they weren't. Why would they be his enemy? But having the humans fight alongside him and actually helping him made him feel as though he wanted to fight for them even the more. He freed himself from the chains and utilized all the rage that he had pent up from losing his family, from wanting to protect all the creatures that died, not just the humans and who they killed, but also what the skullcrawlers have done. Utilizing the broken ship's propeller on a chain, he swung it at the skullcrawler. The blades hit their target. He then reeled in the skullcrawler like a fish caught on a hook, and with his mighty muscles he tenses up and throws the skullcrawler into the side of a cliff. The cliff, unfortunately, where the female human was standing. She screamed and fell off. Kong felt his heart break. She had tried saving him as well, shooting some kind of substance at the skullcrawler's face earlier on. He felt responsible for her life. Wasting no time, he quickly went to her position and scooped her up gently out of the water, his heart sinking when he realized that she might be dead.
"Oh, you poor thing," he said solemnly. "I'm so sorry."
Before he could make a move to nudge her, suddenly his arm was being pulled to the side violently. The disgusting white-faced demon wasn't dead. Its teeth were cutting into the hand that was holding the human. There's no way Kong would give this thing the satisfaction of eating her, even if she was dead. Kong wrestled with it, his rage building up and overflowing. He successfully held it at bay, its claws cutting into his ribs and his shoulder, scratching at his face, his jaws chomping only inches before his face. Its long snake-like tongue lashed out and wrapped around his arm. Kong felt his circulation being cut off. The creature tried to pull Kong's fist into his mouth as a last show of strength. Kong pulled the creature with all the force that he could with his other hand, his fist still closed protectively around the human, until he felt it give way. A piece of the creature came out, until Kong realized it was actually the creature's tongue that he had pulled out with the force of his arm.
"Stay dead,"
Kong said with a frown. He opened his arm to see if the little human female was alive. She wasn't moving. Kong's heart fell. He couldn't even rejoice in his victory, because he didn't get to save her, one of the only kind humans he's met, and now she's dead. As big as he wasn't able to save her. He put her down by the rocks, wanting to cry. If his parents were here now, if they were here and in danger, would Kong have been able to save them? Now Kong understood. He respected his parents even more. His parents were fighters. They were large and daring. Sometimes he'd blamed his family for not being smart enough to overcome the skullcrawlers. Sometimes he was depressed and enraged at the skullcrawlers themselves, creatures that didn't warrant any emotion being directed at them at all. But today, he wasn't able to save a little thing, something so fragile. He then understood what his mother and father must have went through trying to save him, just being born literally on the battlefield. Kong felt like he was drowning in sadness. He watched as what must have been her mate or her brother walked up to her. When Kong looked back, she wasn't moving. He sadly bowed his head and walked away. The enemy human was dead for now. The enemy alpha skullcrawler was dead as well. Kong felt as though things would be decent, at least for the time being. He walked away. He looked into the distance. He huffed, and then he beat his chest and roared. His roar said if anyone wanted to challenge him, they better come now. Nobody answered in response. Chinny and Spanka raised their heads from grazing, hearing Kong's call. Spanka smiled.
"That's my boy, Kong."
Chinny looked up at her grandfather and nuzzled him. "He did it, huh, Pop? It's over?" Spanka did not miss a beat. He didn't look at his granddaughter. He kept looking out into the distance, in the direction from which Kong's cries came. His ears flickered wildly. He licked his lips and shook his head, trying to get the flies away from his face. He took a deep breath, as if he wasn't worried, but what he said worried his granddaughter.
"Well, it's not over, little one. Kong still has a lot of growing to do. The prophecy is not yet fulfilled, and there's gonna come a time where he's gonna face way worse things than what he did today."
"Really?" said Chinny. She looked out into the distance to where her grandfather had been previously looking. He was grazing again. She shuddered. What could be worse than that thing? I hope you guys enjoyed this POV. Stay tuned, there will be more. I did say in 2020 I was going to give you guys more POVs. We're going to be doing something a little bit differently, and I hope you guys like it. Something I actually really wanted to do. I don't know how it's going to do on this channel, but stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching.